Hello everyone, I'm Noah, and for this final discussion board, I'm doing Chapter 7 of the book Focusing on Organizational Change by William Judge. This chapter was in week 6. It focuses on accountability to culture. So this is a topic that really stuck out to me because of how important accountability is, both in my studies as a business student, but also in my career as a case manager in addiction counseling, addiction treatment. So one of the central messages of this chapter was a quote that stood out. It says, "Organizations don't execute unless the right people, individually and collectively, focus on the right details at the right time." So in other words, success doesn't happen just because an organization has a good mission or a good strategy. It happens when people at every level take ownership of their responsibilities and their outcomes. Another thing that stood out to me about this chapter, they gave 7 practices for building a culture of accountability. So just to name a few: assign responsibility for results to everyone, not just leadership. Hold people accountable for their results and their behavior. Recognize and reward accountable actions. Model accountability at the top. Leaders must walk the talk. So these aren't just good ideas, they're essential for any organization trying to grow or lead change. This chapter connected directly to core ideas from our course, including culture, leadership, structure, and environment. So for example, we learned that organizational culture is made up of shared assumptions, values, and behaviors, and that leaders play a huge role in shaping that culture. So Judge's 7 practices are a blueprint for how leaderships can actually do that. This connection became even more clear to me on my final project. I did it on the organizational analysis of Rotary International. So Rotary has a federated structure. There's a central board and a secretariat, but local clubs operate semi-independently. So this structure gives a lot of autonomy to clubs, which is great for local decision making, but it also means that accountability varies depending on the local leadership of each club. So through my interviews and personal experience as a Rotary member, I saw firsthand how leadership practices can make or break accountability. Some club leaders are very clear with expectations and check-ins, while others take more of a hands-off approach. So because club leadership changes annually, there can be inconsistency in how accountability is handled year to year. So Judge's recommendation to build consistency and reinforce shared expectations really resonated with this issue. From a course theory perspective, Rotary's structure aligns well with Mintzberg's divisionalized form and the open systems theory. So Rotary clubs, they act like independent units responding to their environment. So like the book suggests, without shared accountability practices, that autonomy can sometimes lead to misalignment, especially when it comes to large-scale strategic goals like the Polio Plus campaign. We learned that structure must fit the environment, so the structural contingency theory. I think one of Rotary's biggest challenges is making sure accountability doesn't get lost in its decentralized model. So that's where leadership and culture really matter, and that's why Judge's ideas are so valuable. So as someone who works directly with clients in substance use disorder treatment, accountability is part of my daily conversations. We help people take responsibility for their choices, their recovery, their sobriety, their future. But this chapter made me step back and think, is our organization modeling the same level of accountability? What I've noticed in my workplace is that internal accountability is often task-driven, focused on checking boxes, meeting quotas, but sometimes there's a lack of ownership for broader outcomes that create tension. So tasks get missed, staff gets overwhelmed, others feel like they're carrying the weight over time. That leads to burnout and disconnection and often resentments. So what Judge emphasizes is, especially through the idea of assigning responsibility to everyone, this reminded me how critical it is for leaders to model accountability, not just demand it from others. When they do, it creates a culture where people are more engaged and motivated because they understand how their role connects to the bigger picture. It also reminded me what I saw in Rotary. The clubs that had strong, accountable leadership, they were the ones who got more done, and they had more member engagement. The clubs that didn't struggled with follow through, lost momentum, burned out volunteers. So yes, I would absolutely recommend this chapter to anyone working in business, public administration, or nonprofit leadership. It offers practical, actionable strategies to build accountability into the foundation of an organization, not just as a value, but as a culture. Thanks so much for watching. I can't wait to hear what you guys thought. Looking forward to a good end of the semester. Thanks. Bye.